Welcome to the JS Self Care Podcast. I am your host, Janelle. I am a life coach and a social worker of 17 years. I'm based out of New York. A journey to self care can begin at any point in your life. Your journey can begin as a child, as a teenager, as well as in your adult years. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Danielle Strowman from Reconnected Village. Danielle, can you please introduce yourself and tell us about your journey to self care?
Hey everybody, I'm Danielle Strowman, also known as the Hood Therapist. I am the founder of Reconnected Village. That is my business founded off of my personal experience of being placed in a foster care at 3 months, adopted by the same family at 12, and then reabandoned at the age of 15. At the age of 17, I took on my journey to find my family. Through doing so, I took to social media and was able to help others reconnect with loved ones they became estranged from or never met through foster care, adoption, incarceration, as well as death. I've also helped women out of domestic violence situations and helped talk people down from suicide attempts. Through my organization, we provide therapeutic services through life coaching from beginning to end, as well as thereafter, as well as for others. They say it takes a village to raise a child. Sometimes we didn't have that village. So Reconnected Village was a space that was curated for all because I found that when we come together through our commonality, we can actually help each other heal.
Thank you for sharing, Danielle. Can you start with us with your why you were in foster care? If you know why you were in foster care and if you were adopted, can you tell us a little bit about that?
So I was in foster care since I was 3 months old. The reason why I did find out, but you'll have to read my book to find out why.
Yes.
um, as far as my self care is concerned, I started my self care at the age of 17. Foster care for me was traumatic. I had an adoptive mother that didn't actually want me. She literally stated that I was a check for her. Um, and my adoptive father was the one that actually wanted me, which was her husband. At the time, they were boyfriend and girlfriend. Foster care was a job for her, so it was like a revolving door of children at all times. Um, she it was just a job. She really didn't want children. Um, it was neglectful. It was abusive. I was molested and not believed. Uh, it was just a lot of traumatic experiences within that household.
So she didn't show you any love, but yet your adoptive father showed you love, but you actually didn't know. Am I correct?
Right. So I wouldn't say that he showed me love, quote unquote. He was more so a staple in the household as a provider. He was literally an older man. He was actually old enough to be her father. She met him through one of her girlfriends. So he was one of those people that was always in the home, always knew who he was. Um, but there was no real love or affection. He was more so the person that went out, made the money, made sure the bills were paid. And we didn't have too much interaction. If I'm being quite honest, I just remember watching football with them a lot. So I'm a heavy football fan.
What team
Um,
you like?
I am a Philadelphia Eagles fan, hometown. He was actually used to watch the Broncos faithfully, so I believe he was a Broncos fan. And for years, I loved the Broncos because of it. But I'm a hometown girl, so Philly, Sixers, Eagles, Flyers, all that.
You stay with your
And I
town.
remember, yes, and I remember dyeing his hair. He used to get Beijing black dye, and that used to be our one thing that we did together. I would always dye his hair, but I really didn't know how he felt about me because he wasn't a vocal person. He sat back and was that quiet person, even in the midst of some of the things that were going on. I believe that they had conversations on the back end, but I never bear witness to any of it.
So did he sit and watch while your foster mother was abusive, or did he not know because he was at work?
Um, No, he knew she was abusive to every child that came in that household. I can't remember outside of a couple. I can remember two children that she wasn't abusive to, and one of them actually had a bone disease, so he was very fragile. But outside of that, any and everybody that came through that house was verbally and physically abused, so much so that I still have contact with some of them and they're still traumatized behind the things that went on in her household.
That could be very traumatic. At what age did you break away from her? How did you get away? Did she send you away or what happened?
So, she had me since I was 3 months old. I wound up getting adopted against my will, per se, at the age of 12. I remember sitting in the courthouse and, the judge asked foster children before they get adopted by a family, do you want to be adopted by this family? And she had so much involvement with the foster care system. I was afraid to tell them no, which was my answer. I said yes. The reason I was scared to tell them no is she was so heavily involved in the system that these people literally used to come to our house for holidays. They attended her wedding. Um, they were people that stopped by just like any other friend or family. So I felt like, if I told them, and then some of them actually were in the home at some point in time and saw her actually beating the children that were placed in the home. So I felt like there was no safety net for me. And if I was to tell them, no, I didn't want her to adopt me, I was going to wind up back in her house anyway. So what would be the point of speaking up? So I got adopted. Kind of sort of against my will. I said no, but wanted to say yes. But the one thing from that day, two things that I took from that day, honestly, and it may sound weird. One, I did see my original birth certificate, so I was able to see the names of the people that were my original parents, or what I thought, because I later found out that my father's name was not what I thought I saw on that paper.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and biological mother, the name was accurate, but I was spelling it wrong. At 12, I had forgotten. I did remember the name, but I had forgotten to spell it. And the second thing I remember from that day was that was the spark of my love for pancakes. My adopted father, immediately after adopting me, he was the one that actually wanted me. He took me to a diner and we got some buttermilk pancakes, and I've been a fan ever since. But leading up to the adoption was a really good experience in the sense that I was able to see a picture of myself, my biological mother, and a little boy, which I assumed was my brother. And that was the first time I had ever seen what she looked like. Um, and at the time, I didn't make the connection that she was still coming around at some point in time. I'm older and I absolutely don't remember it, but I do remember that
Nope.
picture. Um, Fast forward, I did find out I was around 5 in that picture, 5 years old in that picture. Um, but leading up to, the agency sent someone in, they did an interview with me. We did like this little book of activities. They asked me things that I like, and I felt good about that process because I finally had somebody paying attention to me and asking me what I actually like. Um, and prior to, um, I was called in the kitchen and I was told that my name was going to change. I got adopted.
Mm-hmm.
So my name to all of this was Salisa Kira Hamilton. And, they called me in the kitchen, they gave me a sheet of paper, and I was told to write down what I wanted my name to be. And 12-year-old me wrote a bunch of ridiculous stuff.
Were you naming yourself Cars and Hennessy and
No, I
Lexus?
wasn't naming myself. I can't remember the names, but I promise you they were ridiculous names. Stuff that I probably made up in my head. But they sounded really cute to
Mm-hmm.
me. But I was 12.
Absolutely.
I wasn't in a position to be really picking a name. But I remember his name was John Strowman, and he called me in the kitchen and he said, "Put Danielle on there." Little did I know that that was literally going to be my name. So my name went from Salisa Kara Hamilton to Danielle Lisa
At the
Strowman,
age
and
12?
at the age of
Wow.
12. And the Lisa part was actually kept because people in the neighborhood didn't call me Salisa. Everybody called me Lisa for short. So that was to keep some kind of normalcy. But the traumatic part about that was this is a neighborhood that I literally grew up in. So there from 3 months, and here I am at a school that I've been in since kindergarten, and I'm coming in at seventh grade, and the teacher, I can remember his name, Mr. Clicker. Mr. Clicker says Danielle Strowman, and here I am raising my name saying present, And everybody turned around and was like, that's not your name. And I'm like, yes, it is. So at the age of 12, it's very traumatic to go to school and then you have this brand new name and people didn't even know that you were in foster care. So then you have to explain the name change. And I didn't know how to explain it. And at the same time, I was coming into a place of, having my voice, and I was being molested for years prior to this. And at that same age, I had decided that I was going to speak up because I was fed up with the treatment that I was getting from somebody that was a close family friend. And I wasn't believed.
Wow.
So, I was going through that, and now I'm going through people picking at me because, oh, your name Danielle, you know what I mean? I'm I'm going through that stuff. Um, Fast forward, and now I'm 15, and my adopted father passed away. So with him passing away, that's when I discovered that his wife really, really didn't want me. I mean, her treatment was obvious. Um, of me, her not wanting me to be there. I feel like she never really liked me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I was just there and I was a check. So when he passed away, that's when I was put out and I was sent to a military boarding school called Scotland School for Veterans Children in Scotland, Pennsylvania. And I was left there. So now I'm at the age of 15 and, I'm taking care of myself. I wound up having to get 2 jobs. I worked at the school in Hallmark Dining Services, serving people in the cafeteria. And, during the summertime, I worked at Sheets, which is like I guess you can say a gas station / fast food spot.
Wow.
So I was working there. And, you know, I'm now at the age of
You
17.
became an adult at 15.
Yeah.
The legal age is 18 to 21, and you were 15 years
Right.
old.
Yeah. Out there by myself trying to figure things out in a place full of strangers. I had like this standoffish demeanor to myself because you guys are strangers and you don't know what the heck I just been through. And now I'm thrown into this environment and re-abandoned. I'm forced to survive parentless again. Um, and I don't know who I am. I'm just going through a lot of stuff and trying to figure out why. And the staff up there was very supportive because they made a phone call to her once they found out that I was supposed to be getting Social Security benefits. And, she was on speaker and I heard her say to them, if I have to send these checks up there, y'all might as well send that B home because that wasn't part of the plan. So they took her off speaker, and next thing I know, I just had like a circle of support from the staff, making sure I was okay, helping me with military ball and prom and things like that. Um, and now I'm at the age of 17 up here at this boarding school, and I'm realizing that, my time here is now
Mm-hmm.
ending. um, what do I do next? So I want to say a month prior to me graduating, well, before a month, I sat down and started writing. That had become my therapy. When I was in her home, my therapy was reading. It was like an escape for me. And I had started journaling, but I stopped writing. I had always loved writing, but I had stopped journaling because she found one of my journals one day. And I was just expressing myself. Um, I expressed how I felt about myself, how I felt about my living conditions. Well, not conditions, because the house was beautiful. It was nothing wrong with the house, just how I was being
Mm-hmm.
treated. I expressed my like for a boy that lived across the street. And of course, I got my behind beat because she didn't like the things that I was talking about. She took me to the doctor and made sure I still was a virgin, things like that. Um, and she had really tightened up on me even more because of my journaling. So I stopped. Um, but here I am 17 at this school and I'm just surrounded by strangers and I really didn't know who to talk to and, coming close to leaving because, 12th grade, you got to go once you graduate. So I went and I sat next to a payphone and I started writing. And the only people that I can think to write to, because I had become so disconnected from everybody, I'm sitting next to a payphone and I don't have anybody to call. So I wrote 2 letters, and those letters were addressed um, to two people that came together and made me, which was my biological mother and father. Knowing that they may never read it, I just felt like I needed to get it out. So that's where my self-care journey started, was my
Danielle,
writing.
when you say you wrote these two letters, were you able to send them out? Because at that time, probably there was no social media. Am I correct?
I wasn't able to send them out. I didn't have anybody to send them out to. I was there by myself.
Wow. Do you still have
And
those letters?
I do. They're actually the opening to my
Your
book.
upcoming book. We
Yep.
cannot wait to read
Uh,
it.
so I don't have a release date, but it is called From My Thoughts to Paper. This was my therapy. Um, and I feel like me expressing that, I decided to go ahead and put it into book form and publish it because I had been saying it for years, and I started connecting with people and helping them. And I feel like I have literally helped so many people, and they have been waiting to hear the rest of my story. And just the fact that I shared, I was able to help people heal. So I feel like me putting it out there, I'll be able to help people on a larger scale, because people go through things in silence, and I'm not a silent person.
No,
Not a silent person. I share things because I'm not embarrassed. I guess that's coming from being 15 and just my life just being out there. I really don't care what people say or think. So I'm just an
that's a
open book.
great thing. So you're about to graduate. You write these two letters. What happens after you write these letters?
A month before graduation, I decided to call the woman that had adopted me, and I asked her, could she come to my graduation? So I guess this was like my last attempt before getting out of here. I don't know if at the time I was pulling for strings and hoping that maybe that would get me back into her home. But in my mind, I do know that this woman was mom to
Mhm.
me. I had been in her home since I was 3 months, and she's all I knew. And this was a big accomplishment. I was proud of myself. I made honor roll every marking period while I was up there. So it was a blessing. I had got out of her home, and I felt more comfortable after a while because I had to definitely get acclimated to my new environment. But I excelled in that environment, taking care of myself and being the best student that I could. So I wanted her to come in and take part in that. So a month prior to, I called her, I asked her, she said no. 2 weeks after that, I called her again and I asked her, and she told me no. So a week prior, I made one final attempt and asked her, and that's when she said, I'm not coming to your graduation. You need to find a way back to Philadelphia and find a place to live. So I, broke down crying, got myself together. I called my aunt, which is her sister, and she wound up coming to my graduation along with her two sons. My adoptive older brother came, and my godmother, which was one of her classmates from school, and she brought my boyfriend at the time from Philadelphia. So they all came to my graduation. I didn't tell any of my actual family members what had been said to me. So, they left Scotland, Pennsylvania, and headed back to Philadelphia. And here I was still there. And my godmom, she was like, well, I'm going to take you home. And during the ride, I decided to tell her what was said to me. So now she knew that I didn't have a place to go, but she kind of went into problem
Mhm.
solving mode. And I made a phone call, and I wound up staying with a person that I call Miss Lady. It's an older woman that lived on the block that I grew up on, but she had moved to the next block over. So she allowed me to stay with her, and I stayed there for a little less than 2 years because now, I'm doing grown
Mhm.
things. Wound up pregnant um, with my first child, who I had right before I turned 21. And when I got pregnant, she's like, you out there doing grown things. You and whoever this guy is need to work it out. So I wound up moving in with him. Me moving in with him started a cycle of very, very toxic relationships in my life, because I had always wanted someone to love and care for me. I gravitated towards that relationship, but I had found myself in a bad way. I was pregnant, working, and going to school, and he decided he wanted to quit his job and, get into illegal activities.
Mm-hmm.
With him doing that, a flock of people started coming around him. So now I'm finding myself being cheated on because they now see this guy with money. And I'm being locked out of the house and, walking around the streets pregnant at night or sleeping on trains back and forth just to have a place to stay or even outside. Um, so things just got really, really real for me at that point. Um,
Wow.
and I kind of regressed back into depression. After I had my daughter, that's when I had my first suicidal thought. Um, I noticed that I started to, even in relationships, I started to attribute my past and put it into my present. So when men didn't want me, I would say in my mind, of course they didn't want me. My own parents didn't
Mm.
want me. Who would want? That's the conversation that I started to pick up for myself and carry. And at the time, I had became Muslim. So now, me being Muslim, I find myself doing things to try to adhere to this religion that I'm following because I had been forced to be Baptist. And in high school, I did religious studies for my senior project so I can figure out what it is I actually wanted to follow. And Islam was the only thing that I really gravitated towards and felt like it was truth. So now I'm finding myself in and out of multiple quote unquote marriages because in Islam it's very easy to get married and very, very easy to get divorced. And the reason why we hop in and out of these marriages because I was young and a lot of people, I mean, not even just being young, it's just a thing in the community here, mainly in Philadelphia, where they hop in and out of marriage because we're trying not to fall into fornication. So what we're doing is we're getting into these marriages or contracts and we're coexisting and getting to know each other and then we find out it doesn't work. And I also found myself dealing with people's husbands because they're allowed to have multiple wives. So I just found myself picking up really, really bad behaviors. And it was traumatizing because relationship to relationship, I wanted something to stick and it just wasn't. And then I found myself having 4 children and being a single mother and the fathers acting like the kids didn't exist. Um, so that kind of transformed again into I'm this person with all this trauma and this hurt, and I didn't resolve my issues. And now I'm pushing that off on to my children through my parenting because I was parenting from a place of fear.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, it
You was
just,
parenting from a
I had a,
place of fear. Then you introduce yourself to a religion that you don't want to, be shamed. So
right,
also you had to do whatever that religion required, which was added fear
right.
because of course you don't want to go to hell, you don't want to be stricken, you just want to live and you
Like, oh my gosh, I got to get married or I'm
yeah.
gonna go to hell
Mm.
because of fornication. And I was a very, very sexual person. um Probably because of me being molested at a young age. I was very, very sexually explorative. um Sex
Mhm.
felt good.
It took
You know
away
what I
some of the
mean?
pain
It was
for
a
the
comfort.
moment. It was
Right,
comforting.
it was a comfort for me. And it's crazy because with me saying that, it reminded me about a conversation I had with Miss Lady and the woman that I adopted as my mother, Mama Rita. I met her when I was up at the boarding school and I love her to death. If anybody asks who's my mom, they know that I'm talking about her because she's been there for me and she's been there for the birth of all my children. That's
Yes,
my
that
mom.
is your mom.
That's my
Sometimes it's not the people that
mom.
birthed us, it's not the people that adopted us, it's people and strangers that we meet, that we build families with.
Right.
And it seems like that's
Right.
the family you built while you were in boarding school.
Right, that's where my village started. So Reconnected Village started there. In essence, not in formation, but in essence it started there because I had started to acquire my village. Like some of the people that I was friends with, I'm still friends with present day. Um I have someone that I call my brother and his mother became my mother. And I got integrated into that family.
That's super dope. So Danielle, now you're a mom,
Mm-hmm.
you're out of school, so now your
Mm-hmm.
journey has shifted.
I went to so many schools. I went to so many schools.
Yes. You know what, Danielle? Your life changed. What does that journey look like now?
So now it looks like the hood therapist.
Wow. Well, we want to hear more about the
So
hood therapist, but if you don't mind us asking, um, did you ever find your parents or not, or how's that looking for you?
So I shared everything. And when I say everything, I do mean everything. My failures, my sorrow, um, any way that I felt, any new search that I was embarking on, I shared it on Facebook. So much so that I had people that were pissed off at me and my adopted family, like, why are you telling this? And I'm that person that's sitting there like, well, listen, you guys will read a book or watch a Lifetime movie and it's based off a real life story, and you guys will have, you'll shed tears and, connect with the person. But as soon as it hit close to home, why are you telling
Hmm.
that?
Because
So
it was a secret,
I'm not
that saying, what goes on
right,
in this house stays in this house.
that part. And I'm not that person. And that's where the hood therapist came from, because I was that person that actually shared everything. And my journey to trying to heal myself through writing, it wasn't enough. So I decided that I was going to go to therapy. So I shared everything. And with me sharing that, I was able to connect with people. They started hopping in my inbox or commenting on my statuses like, we're so proud of you, because you shared this. I've had people say, I thought that I was going through stuff, but I'm really not. And after, talking to you, I had people that were thinking about taking their life and they decided against it. Um, Ironically, I had someone that I was close with from the boarding school. She came to me after I found my family and said, you know what, you've been through so much and you held so strong. Around the time that I found my family, her brother was killed and she was contemplating suicide. And I shared my victory of finding my family. And that same day, she called me crying and was like, you know what, I was literally about to take my life and I saw your status and I found hope in it. So I was successful in finding my family February 1st of 2017. I started off my journey with like the white pages and sitting up all night calling people like a weirdo and um following leads that I got, from sharing, and people like, well, check out this area. I heard something from this person. And I wound up in 20th and Susquehanna here in Philadelphia. And I spoke with a drunk person that said that they knew my mother, but everybody was like, don't believe him. Fast forward, turns out he was actually right, because she did live in that area. So listen to
Yes,
drunk
you know
people,
that
because
saying. What they saying, a drunk mind speaks a sober.
a sober
Yes.
tongue, yes. Definitely. But yeah, with me going on social media, people came to me, and people that I knew since I was a child, I didn't know that they put children up for adoption, or, their kids had babies and they hid it from the family, and, they're now looking for these babies. So I was helping people connect even though I hadn't connected. And when I did connect, it just sparked something very, very huge. Where people were just pouring out, and they were like, well, what happened? Like, are y'all still family? Did this happen and that happen? And I didn't share anything after finding them. And that's why people are waiting for this book to find out what
Yes.
happened. But my finding my family came from me going through the court system, and I was turned down. But there was one person, and this is why I love kindness, because sometimes it does take that one person to care. And she saw my frustration, and I was standing there with my four children, and when they told me they couldn't help me, I literally stood there and bust out crying. And my kids were like hugging me like, Mom, it's okay, what's wrong? I didn't really
Hmm.
tell them what we were in that for, but they were like, Mom, what's wrong? It's going to be okay. And the lady, met me at the elevator, and she was like, I'm going to do you a favor, because I was literally telling these people, like, y'all don't know what I've been through. I've been doing this, that, and the third. And, it's so discouraging. And I said, the last thing that I said before I walked out of there is, y'all don't understand. I really want to give up looking for these people, because they gave me up anyway.
Mm.
But I'm doing it for my children, because I know how it feels not to know who you are and where you came from. And I don't want them to feel how I felt. And I guess that resonated with her because she came out to the elevator and was like, I want to help you.
Wow.
Um, and months went by. And after those months went by, I kind of forgot that I had connected with this lady. And I still was like, you know what, I'm going to keep on my journey and keep looking. And, around 10 a.m., February 1st, she called me and she was like, Miss Strowman, are you sitting down? And I was like, hey, who's this? She told me, I out of sight, out of mind, no update, no nothing. So I'm like, well, who was this? And she told me who she was. And I was like, oh, hey girl, how you doing? And, thinking of it, I'm thinking she's about to say, well, I wasn't able to find anything. But no, she was like, I found your dad. And, I got goosebumps,
Mhm.
got cold, just felt like time stopped. And I was like, what you mean? And she was like, I found Richard so and so, so and so. And I'm like, that ain't my dad. My dad name is Kevin Hamilton, because I
Sure.
thought that's what I saw at 20.
Right.
That wasn't his name. she was like, well, no, this is your dad, and it's in your sealed record. So this is definitely him. I called him. I gave him your birth name, and he pulled over and he was crying and he was like, that's my firstborn, that's my baby girl. He gave up all his information and told her to connect us, and she gave me his information and I sat on it for like an hour. I immediately ran to social media and was like, I'm like, these my people, I gotta tell them.
Wow.
I ran to social media and I was like, y'all, I need y'all to pray for me. They just, I just got a phone call that my father was found and I don't know what to do. And people were like, girl, if you don't call them, like they were encouraging me, but I disconnected from social media for a second because I just didn't know what to do with that information. And I called Mama Rita, and as soon as she picked up the phone, I just was like hysterical crying. She was like, what's wrong? She was upset. She's like, what's wrong? Who did it? What's going on? And I was like, they found my dad. And I just was stuck. And she all screaming and excited on the other end of the phone. And I'm just sitting there clueless, like, I don't know what to do. She was like, well, are you going to call him? I was like, no. She said,
No.
what you mean, no?
You were looking, yeah.
She was like, what you mean, no? I was like, I don't know what to say to him. And, like an hour went past and I was on my way to do my taxes. I was on my way to do my taxes. So I'm standing at the bus stop and I'm like, all right, I'm giving myself this talk. I'm like, all right, Lisa, get your life together and call this man.
Mm-hmm.
So I called him and he just was like, hey, daughter. And I'm like, hey.
Yeah, like.
And he's just talking a mile a minute. And I promise you, I'm not listening. I'm just like standing at the bus stop, just in awe that I'm talking to this man. And he's like really telling me stuff. And I'm not listening to nothing he's saying, but he's
You were
talking to
shocked.
me. And yeah, he's talking to me. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So he's giving me like his social media information. And while we're on the phone, I go to his Facebook and I look at these pictures. And Janelle, I just was dumbfounded. I was so dumbfounded because it was like looking at myself in male form.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh. And he told me where he lived, and he was 5 miles from where I was living at that present moment. And I was like, you know what? I could have been walking past my parents and never known, because I never, really knew what anybody looked like. I saw the picture of my biological when we were
Mm-hmm.
younger, through the whole foster care process of adoption. They had given me a picture of her. Well, they put it in a book, and my adopted mother took it. She swore she gave it to me, but I never was able to keep it. So I saw her for a brief moment, but I'm like, I could have been walking past these people and just never knew it. And when I saw his face, I just was like numb.
Wow.
I was numb. Um, I went and did my taxes, and my tax guy and his assistant was just so excited because things just started moving so fast. Um, I had talked to him and we had coordinated the meet, and I'm like, he a stranger. I'm not giving him my address.
You
He's
went in
not coming to
stranger
my
danger
house. I'm
mode.
not going to his. Yes, I'm like, he not coming to my house. I'm not going to his. I need Mama Rita with me because she was in the military, and if we gotta fight this nigga, like I need backup. I don't know what's going to happen. I just didn't know what to expect, and I wanted support. So we coordinated for us to meet. I'm sitting there getting my taxes done, and my tax guy, Brett Parker, he just was so excited because I was telling him, like, I found my dad today. And while I was sitting there with him, I got a phone call, and my dad's name is Rick, and he gave me the correct spelling of my biological mother's name. And, we both did some research, and we were able to find her
Wow.
on social media, on Facebook. And when I connected with her, she's sitting on the phone and she's screaming. You can tell she's running through the house. She's like, "Oh my God, my baby, my firstborn." I just hear her in the background crying and screaming and shouting Jesus and all kinds of stuff. And it just was it was an experience. It was an experience. By the end of that night, I had spoken to him. I had spoken to her. I had spoken to my aunt, whose name is Kira, and found out that that's where my middle name came from. I had spoken to my uncle in Australia, and I had spoken to my sister, who was born a year after me, and she lived in Maryland. But when I went to go meet my biological father for the first time, um, I walked up on this man in the Chick-fil-A
Mm.
parking lot. And when he turned around, my heart just started beating so fast because it was like looking at myself. And, he was like, "Well, can I hug you?" And we hugged each other. And the only thing he said, he was like, "I could feel your heart beating."
Wow.
And I just broke down crying when he said that. And I just held him and I was like, "Oh my God, like this is my dad."
Wow.
And it just was, I don't know. It was an experience. It was definitely an
Well, that's where
experience.
Reconnected Village. That's part of the growth. That's like a branch on your tree, one of the branches.
Yeah, so I was able to help people, and I finally connected with mines, and people were excited for me. Um, it
Yes.
was just a it was an amazing
And I am
experience.
so happy that you met your family. But I met you as the hood therapist. Where did that come from?
Right.
Because you're adoptee
So
looking for your parents. Then it's this name,
right,
the hood therapist.
right. So born and raised in Philadelphia, and when I got back here, the section of the city that I lived in was Mount Airy, which is, people call it the uppity section. Mount Airy and Chestnut Hill is known for being like the quote unquote suburban parts of the city, and the rest of the city is just the
Mm-hmm.
hood. So when I got back here, I had to live in the places that I can afford because I wasn't able to go to college, because I wasn't emancipated and she refused to fill out my financial aid. So I'm back in the city and I'm just floating around from place to place. Um, South Philadelphia, West Philly. I've literally lived in every single section of this city. And it's been the hood parts because that's what I was able to afford. But I'm a social butterfly. I became the social butterfly. I found my voice. I came into who I am and being comfortable with myself. So I just started being kind and talking to everybody. And with me talking to people, I would sit out on my step in these neighborhoods, or, working in the Baltimore area when I moved there. I was in the inner city. And I guess from me growing up around all brothers, I connected to men a lot. So I would find myself sitting around, and, I also did hair. So I'm doing hair, and people, barbers and hairdressers are quote unquote therapists because everybody tells all their business.
Mm-hmm.
But sitting around and talking to people, I connected with a lot of men, and they would literally pour out everything that they had been through. And with them pouring into me, I was pouring into them. And they started saying, "Yo, this is some hood therapy." So, they were sending people, and next thing I know, it was like groups of us sitting on the step. And, it
It
was
was
a
dope.
beautiful
You did
thing
group
because,
sessions with men
right, they really don't talk
at
about
all.
intimate things or personal things or
Mm-hmm.
trauma, childhood trauma, relationship trauma,
Yeah. I was about
molestation,
to say that's why we
things
don't
became
believe in statistics because you know for a
right,
fact that you have a crew of men who have been molested, who have had trauma.
suicidal
Yes.
thoughts, right? They they've been through a lot of things. You know, they talk to me about why they turn to drugs or why they abuse women or issues that they had with their mother or father. um, and with me sitting down and helping them through these things, and also helping some of them reconnect to children, that they had issues with the mother, or fathers that they weren't connected to, or even mothers, helping them strengthen relationships, just helping them strengthen themselves and their relationships. They really took to me, and they started calling me the hood therapist, and that's where that name
And
came from.
you're planning on keeping that name, right? Yes.
Absolutely.
I love it. Because
Absolutely.
when I first saw you, I was like, well, what does this her therapist do? Let me check her out. And you and I connected instantly.
Right.
So Danielle, now that you're the hood therapist, you stated earlier, and I wanted to touch on it before we end. You said you're a jack of all trades. You went to many schools, and then you say you're a hair braider. So how does that reconnect the village actually look?
So Reconnect the Village, it actually, if I'm being truthful, Reconnect the Village came from my little brother. He was a foster child as well, and he got adopted into the same family. His name was Ernest Allen Strowman. And same way I was put out, she kept him longer, but eventually she put him out, and he had an alcohol problem. He From his trauma, he had turned to alcohol. And that changes people's behavior, moods, and everything else. And I don't want to give excuse, but I'm willing to believe, because I took him in as well. I believe that she put him out because his behavior was so sporadic. And in my head, I'm like, well, my brother's been missing for 2 years. Y'all don't know where he's at. So when y'all find him, I want my
Mm-hmm.
brother. And at the time, I was in Maryland. So my other survived, my older brother actually died from cancer. So it was two surviving brothers and myself, that lived in that household. Of course, I had older siblings because she had married someone that was old enough to be her father. But in the immediate household, it was three boys, one girl. Um, so I had two surviving brothers, and my younger brother brought my youngest brother to live with me in Baltimore. And I had a conversation with him. So, I'm helping people. We didn't know any of his real history outside of the fact that he was born addicted to
Mm-hmm.
crack cocaine. And he had the same issues that I had, not knowing who he was, battling identity issues and wanting to know. And then being casted out of the home that he knew. The bottle was his
Right.
comfort. So I wound up getting into a really bad domestic situation, which almost lost my life twice. And I wound up coming back to Philadelphia. But my brother and I had agreed that he needed help. And I had attempted to get him help several times, and he had left that help. And I said to myself, he's not going to get help until he's ready
Absolutely.
to. So I tried to be with him. And he had finally agreed to go get the help. And in the midst of that, I came back to Philadelphia for my safety. And the guy that tried to kill me is now doing 13 years, but still was bothering me.
Mm-hmm.
So when I came back, um, my brother wound up passing.
My deepest
And,
condolences.
I thank you. Yeah, he wound up passing in Maryland. And that kind of sparked me really forming this into an official business, because I wasn't able to help him reconnect. And I know that that's something that him and I had talked about. And he was encouraging me to finish my book because it would help people heal. And he was encouraging me to get my business together. So I went through about 2 months of depression, because that was like one of my kids that I lost, because he was literally 10 years younger than me. And, I was like, I got to do this
Mm-hmm.
for Ernie. So I started officially farming all of my paperwork to make my business. And, I set everything up on social media, which people were looking for it anyway, because I was already doing the work. I just didn't have the actual business structure.
And you are
Um,
doing the work.
right. I've been doing the work. I just officially got my business up and running in
Absolutely.
2020, um, paperwork wise. And fast forward to 2021, Reconnected Village has shaped from me just helping people connect to their family to actually providing, the therapeutic services through life coaching, because I was already doing that work. I have
I think
found
you've been
that,
doing that work
you know,
since you were 12 years old, Danielle. I just want to let you know that. Yes,
probably.
you've been doing the work. You became
Probably, because
unmuted.
I've always talked to people. Yeah, I've always talked to people and helped them through their issues. So I have been technically doing the work since I was younger. Um, but yeah, moving forward, once I formed the business, and yeah, through the process of helping people, they literally were still coming back to me like, you know, how do I handle this? And I was coaching them through those things, through life period, because everything was connected, you know, the trauma. I went back to school and, you know, focused on business and trauma, in the mental health realm, because I wanted to understand myself and I wanted to understand other people. And I also wanted to help my children, because me parenting from that place of fear, some of my experiences turned into trauma for my children because they were going through that journey with me. So Reconnected Village now, present day, is not only me helping people find their family, but actually helping them heal. Um, because I came on Clubhouse, which is where you and I
Mm-hmm.
met. And when I got on Clubhouse, I was marketing my business as, you know, I'm helping people connect to their family and providing therapeutic services. Excuse me. And I started to see that this app is connected to the world, and we're in the middle of a pandemic, and people are literally sitting on these stages and pouring out their trauma. And you know, there were moderators on this app, and they were, you know, I'm sorry for your loss, or, you know, things are going to get better. They were giving them very generic responses, and people were going on mute. And I'm an empath, so I was feeling their pain. I was absolutely, you know, when they came off, you can tell when
Mm-hmm.
somebody's hurting. um and they were hurt, and I didn't like how their situation was being handled. So I started saying, do you mind if I talk to this person? And my community started to grow on Clubhouse because I was literally speaking up and helping these people and giving them real help. And I found myself doing crisis response on this app as well, because people were literally talking about being tired and wanting to end their life. And um, it was like, oh my gosh, you got to help them. So I was pulling people into private rooms and helping them. Um, Giving them my phone number, hopping on video conferences through Instagram, whatever way I can get to these people to help them immediately. I was doing that because they needed that help. And I didn't feel comfortable with them just going back on mute and being silenced and sitting in that sorrow. Um, so there I started the mental health check-in, which is where you
Yes.
came in. The mental health check-in came from, you know, people need the space, and I have all these people now following me because they see that I'm helping, so I'm going to hold that space for them. And that room was supposed to be an hour, and it turned out being 3 and 4 and one time seven
Mm-hmm.
hours and I just was making sure that I was holding space and listening to them and really actively helping them in that moment, because I never wanted anybody to get off of that stage and feel like they
Right.
weren't
And the
better.
thing is, what I want to say, Danielle, I'm a social worker and I have my 9 to 5. And what I do is, what I realize is that we all work with people, and I realize I only work 9 to 5, but most of the crisis is after 5. Remember, you said you be on that app.
Yes.
You was on that app one time for 7 hours. And the reason why you was
Right.
on that app for so many hours is because people needed that help at the after 5 hour. At
Right.
5:01, probably your room was filling up, because now we're off of work and now we have no one checking in on us. As a therapist, as a social worker, as a mental health counselor, as a life coach, as all these hats that many of us wear, we can't, we wear those hats, but we don't understand that we need help too. We need someone to
Right.
ask us,
I
how is our day?
time therapist.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's really hard. It's really hard to,
Yeah.
process what you've been through, because I could tell you right now, Danielle, if I go to work tomorrow, there could be a new case: sexual abuse, physical abuse, a parent overdose. All of those, and those are three different traumatic issues that a child is going through and a family is going through. And now they're on my desk. And now I got to help all
Right.
three of them within the 24-hour span. So it's really
Right.
hard for us. So that is why I want to thank you so much for taking the time to record this podcast and share this with the world, because you know what? Like I tell anybody, when you're on your journey to self-care, somebody is out there either fighting to start a journey to self-care, and they're struggling because they
Right.
don't know how, and they feel as if they're in this world alone. And through these journeys, what we're showing others is they don't have to do this alone.
Right. Yeah, because my journey of self care looked like many different things over the years. So I do need people to understand that self care is continuous work. Because things are always happening, and you always have to hold space for yourself before you can hold space for others. So I definitely make sure that um listening to my body, paying attention to my emotions, and keeping myself in that constant balance, because that's another thing. When you're having people pour into you, you have to make sure that you're okay before you can even put yourself in that environment. Otherwise you're just absorbing their emotions, and now you're not
Absolutely. And
okay.
that's what turns into burnout. Danielle, if
Right.
someone wanted to speak to you after listening to this episode, I know you're very visual on Instagram. Can you give us your Instagram handle so that people around the world can connect? Because that's the way people connect in these days through social media.
Right. So I'm laughing because every time I tell my Instagram name, people laugh at it and they say why. So my Instagram name is nope, NOPE underscore not NOT underscore today, TUHDAY. And I picked that name because people come with nonsense sometimes. And I want to say that the one person that I look up to in the industry is Iyanla Van Zant. Like I aspire to be like her. At one point, I wanted her to fix my life, and then I realized that I can do what she does. So I'm definitely following in her footsteps and would love to meet her one day. But I am definitely a person that comes from compassion, caring, love. Anyone that sits in my presence can feel that exuding from me. But I'm also a person that will tell you about yourself. So I'm like a no nonsense person. So nope, not today means that anytime that you read this, don't bring it this way, because nope, not today, not tomorrow, not ever.
We love it. So make sure that you guys connect with her on Instagram. If anything in this episode resonated with you and you would like to speak to Danielle or myself, please see the contact information in the show notes. Her Instagram handle will be in the show notes. So, Danielle, before I end any podcast, would you like to spread some positivity to anyone who is going through something? Would you like to share some positive words?
Definitely. In my mental health check in, I share something that I do want to share with everyone. And then I have another thing
Sure.
that I share as well. So the first thing is my trash truck analogy, which you're
Mm-hmm.
familiar with. So I tell people that, we're kind of like that trash truck, in a sense that a trash truck goes from block to block to block, just picking up trash, and it compacts those things down. And that's what we do with our experiences and our emotions. We don't want to deal with them, so we're just packing it down and we keep going. However, that trash truck goes to some place eventually and it dumps that trash. We need to do the same thing. We need to start unpacking the trauma, the hurt, anything that we're going through, even if it's something for the day. We need to learn to start unpacking things so that we're not constantly carrying it along our journey with us. The other thing that I want to share is people are often saying rock bottom. They hit rock bottom. Rock bottom is a comfortable space for me, simply because when you hit rock bottom, that's a place of darkness. It's a place of foundation. A place of darkness is where you usually can see the light the brightest. You can be walking in the light, but really don't have direction sometimes because you can't see the light. You're in it. So I feel like when you're at rock bottom, that's when you can see the brightest light. Also, it gives you that foundation so that you can stand up and rocket yourself higher than where you were. So it allows you to elevate yourself. So think of it as darkness where you can see the light, and a place where you can actually stand, get your footing, and then jump and skyrocket further.
Thank you so much, Danielle, for sharing your journey to self care with JS Self Care. We
Yeah.
love you, and we cannot wait until the book comes out. And hopefully you consider coming back on to share with us your book.
For sure, for sure.